Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling in from. Thank you for taking time out of your busy week to be with us. My name is Alon Shalev, and I'm the Executive Director of American Friends of Hand in Hand. For those of you who are less acquainted with Hand in Hand, we're a network of bilingual, bicultural schools in 6 regions in Israel with over 2,000 students and a community of over 7,500. It includes staff and parents and families, alumni and professional networks. Our students learn in Arabic and Hebrew, later in English, and celebrate each other's festivals and cultures. We have a Palestinian and Jewish teacher in each classroom, and we strive for a 50-50 balance of students. In our 2 previous webinars, we heard from the Hand in Hand CEO, Danny Elazar, who is here again today and will close the webinar, and 2 incredible alumni. Today, we want to share the perspectives of 2 very special people, a principal and a parent, both of whom have been deeply impacted by the war. So let's begin. Mohammad Kundos, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Alon. Hello, everyone. Salam, shalom, marhaba. Um, I love to start by saying a prayer, which I always do in front of my kids, the parents, my staff. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bishem Elohim ar-Rahman ar-Rahum. In the name of the Lord, the most compassionate, the most merciful. And I'm starting with this prayer because it's part of my identity. And I think one of the most important things about what Hand in Hand does in our schools is to allow a safe space for all of our identities to be honored and to be respected. So my name is Mohammad Kundos. I'm from Jaffa, Tel Aviv. Historically, it's a multicultural city. And I would love to start telling you about myself from the story of my family. Um, and the story starts in 48. And I will connect this story with what I do now in Hand in Hand. In 48, big part of my family from my father's side was expelled to Gaza. Um, and one of the main stories that I heard from my father that my grandfather is the only one that decided to stay in Jaffa and said, I'm not leaving anywhere because I believe that we all deserve to live here together. My grandfather had Jewish neighbors, and he said, whatever happens with the war, I'm not gonna leave my house, and I'm not gonna leave my neighbors. And that's one of the stories that I keep reminding myself with in order to be able to survive this crucial, crazy days that we're living here now in Israel, Palestine. And if we jump from 48 to now, the same family that were expelled in 48 from Jaffa to Gaza was expelled again and flee from Gaza City in November 2023 to Rafah, to the south of Gaza. And unfortunately, we lost contact with them in December 2023. And one of the conversations that I'm having with my father lately is about this feeling uh, of being hopeless. Hopeless in the meaning that, not being able to see a better future. And I wanna share with you this gap between what my father feels and what I convinced him to feel. I'm sharing with my father that you should call them. You should try and call them and see what's happening with them. And he's not able to call my family in Gaza for two reasons. The first reason is that he's afraid to hear the news. He's afraid to know, and that's something that for me as an educator is something that is very hard to listen to. Not being able to know the truth or know what's happening with your family. And the other reason that he's not being able to call his family in Gaza is that he has nothing to offer for my family. And at the end of our conversations, of course, I tried to call our family and we couldn't even talk to them. They didn't answer. The phones are dead and they're probably dead. And I'm saying this now because this hard moment of realizing how crazy, how crucial, how hard this war is the same place that I find my reason of being a principal of hand-in-hand schools. Because for me, I choose to be part of the solution and not to fall and be part of the problem. For me, as Muhammad, as educator, as musician, as an actor, theater actor, I believe that my duty to my family in Gaza is to fight for a better future for all of us. And my commitment to my staff, my Palestinian and Jewish staff, and to my Palestinian and Jewish students, and to my Palestinian and Jewish community in our school, my commitment to them is what brings me every day to the school. And this something that is magical. And there is this, there is a big gap, there is a big difference between what we feel when we're doing what we're doing in our schools and what the media shows us outside. Because what we hear outside is a great conflict that shows only the extreme voices from both sides. Because the majority of the Palestinian people and the Jewish people are focusing on one narrative. And what we try to do in our schools is to give the basic rights for our students to see the whole picture. And these moments, when we allow them to see the big picture, to step into each other's hearts and minds, and try to have a complicated conversation and realize that we're all human beings that want the same things, that believe in peace, that believe in justice, that believe in freedom. Being able to see that when you open your eyes to this fact, you cannot close them. You don't need to close your eyes after you see this magic. And that's something we try to convince ourselves and the staff, the students, and the families that we work with, and the brighter, of course, audience, is to show them how easy it is. Because when we're talking with kids, the kids don't see who's Jewish and who's Palestinian and who's, they don't see these labels that we as adults see. They see pure human beings. And when you work with them, it allows you to live in peace. I feel on a daily basis that I live in peace by doing the right thing, by creating a stage, a safe environment for these kids to feel that they're doing something that is part of creating a larger solution. And by doing that, we're allowing them to be active, to be hopeful, to be who they want to be. And that's something that, in one hand could sound very, cliche, could sound very, daydreaming, could sound a lot of things for those who don't want, for those who don't choose peace. Um, and by doing that, we allow ourselves to look to reality. We allow ourselves to face reality. We allow ourselves to ask the hard questions. Because I'm sharing you what I'm sharing now, but it's not easy. Since October 7, we're living in a crazy war, and we're not ignoring this war. We're allowing the kids and the parents and the staff to talk about the war, but to talk about the war from a different perspective, from a perspective that is based on mutual understanding that we need to listen to each other. We need to face each other. We need to allow our pain, our feelings to be put on one table without without the need to go to the extreme violence. And I think what we're creating on a daily basis is proving to ourselves that what we're doing is sometimes it's even the most radical act, the most radical educational act to change the political picture. And it's it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Alon said we're counting more than 7,000 community members, 2,000 students, and when you're analyzing these numbers, it's crazy numbers because in terms of how many educational schools, how many schools in Israel, we're talking about more than 5,000 schools. How many of these schools are bilingual? Only 9. It's crazy number because we believe that if you want peace, you have to educate for peace. That's why we're aiming and we want to make our impact larger than it is right now, but not belittling of our impact the way it is today. Although we're only 6 schools that are part of Hand in Hand, and another 3 schools that part of different NGOs, uh, we're doing a lot of impact, but it's not enough to change the reality. We need to make this circle larger. And I hope with your help, with your support, with people who really believe in it, we can make our impact larger and spread this word to the whole world. And what we're seeing now in the whole world is crazy because our mission is to take these values of freedom, coexistence, and equality and equity, not only in Israel. I believe, as Muhammad, I believe that our mission is to take what we have in our hands to the whole world.
Thank you, Mohammed. Those powerful words. Rebecca, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah. Thank you all for being here. I see a lot of names of people who I know and love. It's nice. So I'm currently only a parent at Hand in Hand, but I started as a parent in 2011 when my oldest was then starting at pre-kindergarten. And by the end of the year, I joined also at the organization at the time that we were then 3 schools, and we're at the start of our vision of expanding with the vision of being a countrywide network, and rapidly expanded over the next 8 years that I was there to a network of 6 schools. And at which point I left to do other things with Shared Society and bring this story out more widely. But my daughter is still there. I have 3 kids who've been for many years, and my youngest is now in 8th grade there. And one of the questions that we were asked as part of our preparation is, why is it important to be here with you tonight? For me, it's evening. For us. And I actually got quite emotional as I was looking over the questions in advance of all this, because there's such a gap between where we should be, where we'd like to be, where we want to be as a place, as a country, as a homeland for 2 peoples, and where we obviously are. I grew up in Berkeley, California, with a strong Jewish background and a strong connection to Israel. I worked for several years with Bosnian refugees during the 90s and moved here from post-war Bosnia, having worked, after working for some years with refugees who'd been in Hungary, and then in Bosnia with the post-war process of refugee return and reconstruction, and came directly to Israel from there, wanting to be part of this country and to be part of this place and building it, whatever that means in well, this day and age, that day and age. That was 1998. And I came here understanding very deeply, having seen what I'd seen in Bosnia, just how urgent it was for us not to allow ourselves to get to such a point. This was in 1998, so things were rough. Post-Oslo, post-Rabin's assassination, already things were not in great shape. And yet it took me a number of years before I actually finally began to work on these issues in some way, shape, or form, and that was through Hand in Hand. And I'd begun worrying about what was happening in terms of extremist voices on the Jewish side, that included very anti-Arab and Palestinian voices that I felt I hadn't heard in my earlier years of living here. And I thought, well, how do I be part of bolstering democracy? What does that actually mean, that kind of language? And as I began to meet different people, I met Shuli Dichter, who was then the CEO of Hand in Hand, and had this vision of expansion. I thought, it's easy to criticize, but can you create the alternative? And that is most definitely what Hand in Hand is doing every single day in the work that we're doing. The urgency of this and the gravity of it and the challenges of it were always clear to me. They're that much clearer to me with what I've experienced with October 7th and since then. The morning of October 7th, we were actually camping, my family with very good friends, just outside of Jerusalem. I live in Jerusalem. And we woke up, my husband and I, at 6:30 to very loud sounds. We thought it was thunder, and we were very confused because it was this beautiful day. And we look around outside the tent, and it's a sunny, beautiful day. And we think, how, thunder, but it's just this continual rolling, rumbling. And we realized within a minute, 2 minutes, that this had to be Gaza. There had to be something from Gaza. And within a few more minutes, we saw on our phones what was starting to happen. Over the next few hours, as we began to figure out, what do we do? Do we leave? Do we wake up the kids? We realized that our cousin was down south at a music festival. His name is Hirsch. Probably some of you heard of him, Hirsch Goldberg Poland. And my son, who's now 17, said, oh yeah, Hirsch is at this music festival. He's at they called it a Misibat Teva, like a nature party down south. And my husband said, oh, well, tell him we can drive him back if he needs, because his parents are Shabbat observant. We can go get him. So over the next hours, we reached out to him. We didn't hear from him. And when I got home from camping, we went home at a certain point, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who lives not far from where we've been camping. And she said, Rebecca, are you guys okay? Do you need to come to my house? She knew we'd been camping. And then she told me in a whisper, so her children wouldn't hear, breaking down. And she said, our neighbors just told us that their daughter has been kidnapped by Hamas from a Misibat Teva, from a nature party. And she used that same expression that my son had used about where Hirsch is. So I got very panicky. First of all, even those words, got kidnapped by Hamas, was like incomprehensible at the time. We've gotten used to it since then, obviously. I went to my husband, I closed the door, and I told him what had happened, and we reached out to his parents. to tell them we'd heard and to check if they'd heard anything from Hirsch. Anyway, over the next hours and 2 days, we soon found out that he'd been abducted. Over the next few weeks, Anderson Cooper from CNN told his parents about a video that he'd seen. It turns out we found, it was of Hirsch being kidnapped. And the night of August 30th, September 1st, was the news that he was one of the 6 executed. Over the course of this whole year, our family was very, very involved with Rachel and John, his parents, in the fight for Hirsch and for the other hostages. And we continue to be involved to the extent that we can. So this has hit us very close to home. I will say that as soon as we found out what had happened with Hirsch and we understood, and my daughter, who's at Hand in Hand and was then in 7th grade, so she'd grown up there, but she was at the start of what's here, the middle school. So she'd sort of transitioned for many years at elementary into the middle school with some new staff, many of whom I know and love, but it was still a bit of we're at the very beginning of the school year. And immediately her teacher reached out to us and said, what can she do and this and that. We agreed that my daughter Darielle should meet with the therapist, the school counselor, as soon as school started. So 2 days later, they went back to school, and that day my daughter met with the school counselor, whose name is Amram, which is an Arab name. It's an Arab woman, someone I hadn't met before. I have huge confidence in Hand and the staffing and hiring, so had no doubt that this would be a good person. But still, it's a little complicated when we've all just learned what's happened and everything's so raw and crazy, and to think, will this be hard for my daughter? Maybe will be hard for the counselor to have this discussion about what's going on. Later that same day, my daughter came home and I said, "Oh, how was school? How was it? What happened?" She talked about the conversations they had and how everyone shared in school what had happened, and that she'd met with this counselor, and that it was a very good meeting. She felt comfortable with her. And later that evening, Anram wrote to me, and she reached out and introduced herself and said, "Today I met with your daughter, and Libi itchem, my heart is with you, and I'm here to talk about whatever you need." And that was a very emotional moment for me, because just the fact that, we have no idea, all of us are in such foreign territory trying to figure out this whole situation. And this response of just pure empathy was a very profound moment for me. And I think that's continued with me since. I know that for various people, so many aspects of what's happened here abroad has challenged their alliances, their camps, their beliefs. But I think that is something that has carried through with me. My experiences at Hand in Hand throughout this whole time have been very powerful and only positive and only loving and warm from everybody who we know and care about. And I think it comes back to what Mohammad also talked about, that the power of relationships for us and for so many of us, and I think at Hand in Hand, where the relationships are so deep because we're with each other every single day. And that's really carried us through in a very, very significant way.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you both for your vulnerability, your honesty. Your stories are both unique and yet so reflective of the deep trauma throughout the schools and throughout the region. I want to ask you to pivot slightly and speak more to your roles in Hand during this crisis, how things have changed, the roles that you find yourself having to take. Mohammad, let's start with you.
First of all, thank you, Rebecca, for your thoughts and your story. It's inspiring and it's touching and it's painful. Thank you. We can start. I can start sharing what we did on October 7 and October 8. The first moments when you realize, what's happening. I think it was, first of all, I was stuck in San Diego. I was on delegation for HIH High with another principals that we were talking about high education and how to get different ideas in education to back home. And I remember the first moment when we decide, when we realize that something big is happening, the first thing that came to my mind is to invite the whole community and staff to a Zoom meeting and be clear about reminding everyone why we chose hand in hand. Because for me, starting having a political conversation about who's right and who's wrong and who started and who, it's not about that. It's about being able to have a clear vision of where we want to go. It's about having a clear dream about how we imagine the future that we want to live in. If Gandhi said, I know some people say it's not Gandhi, but if Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the future, so it's reminding people that with this sentence, it's talking straight forward to the eyes, to the families, to the staff, and telling them what we're doing is to be the future that we all, not only in hand, all of us want to see in the future. And I think that's where I felt the connection between the both roles of the principal, the administrative role and the leadership role. Because people in time of crisis, in time of trauma, uh, they're not capable of seeing the path. They're not capable of seeing the lighthouse. And our role as educators is to shine this lighthouse, this vision, this idea, and remind everyone that what we're doing is the direct political act in order to change the reality that we're living in. And in education, we always believe that it's simple. And when I say it's simple, I know it's complicated, but it's simple. It's simple in a way that when we teach values, we teach our kids that in order to measure values, you have to be able to fight for these values for everyone. So if I believe in freedom, justice, and equality, I must fight for peace, freedom, justice, and equality for all. That means I need to fight in the same way to kids in Gaza, in the same way that I fight for kids in Sderot. And when we're talking about this, methods and these ideas with kids, for them, it's obvious. Duh, of course, and it's more complicated to have this conversation with the adults. But for me, working with their kids in front of them, it's an educational act that proves to the staff and to their parents that it's possible. That's in one hand. On the other hand, we were able to create a very honest conversations through our dialogue facilitators. And that's one thing that hand in hand does, in hand, every staff in our schools and every community have a monthly meeting, dialogue meeting, where we open everything. And with professional facilitators, we allow our pain to be in the room. We allow our anger to be in the room. We allow our emotions, our confusion to be in the room, because we cannot ignore what we feel. We have to put it in the middle and create a circle that can support everyone. And even though we can disagree on the political context of what led to what, we are committed on the human side to each other. And when we're seeing these kids being able to sing together, to cry together, to play together since kindergarten, we're allowing them to feel this humanistic connection that bonds them together. That's why when we're having a complicated conversation about political sensitive issues, they don't, in their state of mind, they don't need to go to violence. They can have a conversation. They can disagree, and it's okay. And that's what we want to live in. That's what we want to create in our country. We want to create a country, a free country that we can live peacefully with our disagreements. That's the second thing. The third thing is to put emphasis on what connects us. And I started with saying a prayer in the beginning, but in these crucial times, every national group naturally will go back to its corner, to its side. And what we're doing in terms of what content we're teaching is we put emphasis on what stories in both cultures are connected. For example, when we're talking about the creation of the earth, we learn it in the Torah, we learn it in the Quran, we learn it in the Bible, we learn it in science. And by doing that, we're allowing our kids to see that there is a lot of meeting points in our cultures, and it's more than our differences. And when we're facing a crucial year like this one, you have war and it's not ending. You have to be always sensitive to what voices the kids bring to our school. And in terms of creating dialogue sessions, we also do it within the kids in the classroom to be able to let them and make them feel that we see you. And it's okay to bring difficult topics to classroom. It's okay to bring anger to the classroom. The key point is how we deal with our emotions and how we talk about our emotions without the need to hurt each other, or uh, um, without having to go to the extreme sides of violence, of cursing, for example. And I'm giving you specific examples because that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis. For kids, it's about how to talk, the music that I use in terms of how I talk, what I talk, how I translate my ideas in a way that I make sure that the person sitting in front of me can really listen. And as a musician, I always give this example of how harmony works. Harmony, it's the idea of having a couple of voices played together at the same time. And what we're doing in hand is to teach kids that couple of narratives can really live with each other and create harmony out of it. And although this idea is very nicely brought to the kids, but we're not ignoring that even in Western music, in Western harmony, the Western harmony is based on the voices that are accepted in the Western world. But there is Middle Eastern quarter tones, for example, that are not on the in the Western harmony. How can we deal with that? So when we're having a music activity in the kids, I show them, the tones, the scales on the piano, what voices can we play in harmony, and I show them also, I play for them my oud, and it has quarter tones. And I ask them, these questions. What do I do when some voices that I play in my oud is not, they don't exist on a piano. So I'll get answers like, you don't need always to play them together. You can play one after another. And these solutions, when they come from little kids, uh, they teach me that we as adults should understand that we should accept the reality that not all voices can be played together. Harmony is one concept, but if we want people to really listen to each other's story, to each other's narrative, we sometimes need to take step back and not force this harmony on them. Sometimes we need to play every instrument or every voice one after another to be able to give these voices its respect and its place. I hope I didn't confuse you with this music thing, but we have to be creative as educators. We have to take the conflict and be creative on how to teach it in music, in theater, in everything. So I hope I answered your question alone, but if not, I can.
I think it was a beautiful insight in how you fuse together as a musician and looking for these educational opportunities. That was brilliant. Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah. So first of all, I just have to say, I love that music analogy. I love music. I was in a Jewish a cappella group for many years as a conductor. And so music has been a very powerful part of my life, has shaped me a lot. And so it spoke to me greatly, what you said. I mean, everything, but also that analogy. And in terms of sort of the framing of your question, Alon, so this whole situation has been the first, well, I guess the second round of our continual escalations of conflict in this region that I've experienced when I was not deeply a part of Hand in Hand, because of course being a parent is a part of, but it's not quite the same as being part of the senior leadership team, which was very hard in many ways. And I specifically would seek out my colleagues and friends and fellow parents and come and meet and talk and also hear. One of the things that was very impactful for me in my years of being 24/7 part of Hand in Hand as a parent, community member, and as part of the senior leadership, is that I was also constantly hearing from the Arab experience and the Palestinian experience, which is something that is very hard to access. We are in such silos as communities that it's very hard to really understand the lived experience. And so that was something that I really understood how much I wasn't getting by not being a part of that. And so I very much sought it out throughout the time period. When I left Hand in Hand, in many ways, I guess I was fulfilling one of the things that Shuli, the sort of who was heading it when I joined the organization, he always used to say that it's not fair of parents to put the burden of what we're trying to do just on the shoulders of children, and we as adults have to lead the way, which was the idea behind the community work that we began at that point and that has continued and is thriving. And I guess in many ways, my many years of experience at Hand in Hand started as a parent and then joining the leadership team. And one of the things that I really found was that the experience, like I said, of being every day in contact with parents and with friends and with colleagues, and be it in casual conversation or very deep, intense dialogue, or even arguments about stuff, it was this continual experience of learning and understanding things and about the lived experience that you could only understand by hearing it, even if it was something that I already knew about and I already sort of believed was, let's say, problematic. When you heard about people's lived experience of it, you could understand it and know it in a different way, in a way that you couldn't if you weren't hearing and living vicariously through what someone else was telling you. And one of the things that I really understood through my time at Hand in Hand is that the power of those stories, and it could even just be 2 sentences, which suddenly bring something to life in a way that you hadn't understood before, was very impactful in ways that argument and analysis and data couldn't be. And so the work I'd been doing was having me share a lot of stories all the time. And I realized at a certain point, I have so many more stories to share. And it goes beyond what I was doing in visits or in little articles that I was writing. It really needed sort of a book length treatment, depth. So I left Hand in Hand in part to work on this book. About sort of this journey into the world of shared society and trying to really sort of make the case through that story for the importance of these issues and for the importance of this pathway that we're all on. The urgency of that obviously only is all the greater. Obviously, the challenges to it are all the greater, but every day we have a choice, and every day we're all making choices. And there's really no reason why we can't be making more choices that are the kinds of choices that we at Hand in Hand and in other shared society and shared circles are making. As Mohammad said, on the one hand, it's simple and it's complex and it's simple. And that lived experience that we have is something that very few people have access to because for a million reasons. There's so much division. There's so few places where people are really together in a way that's meaningful and allows for contact. And for relationships that are both simply human and also are dealing with some of the broader issues that we're dealing with. So part of what I've been doing is writing this book and in other ways trying to sort of bring these stories out more broadly to other people. I still have lots more work to be doing in that respect. But one of the things I've done most recently is start a Substack, which is a form of, for those of you who don't know it, it's a platform to share writing. And I called it From Despair to Determination, because that really, I think, captures my constant daily, if not hourly, sometimes loop between all the reasons why things are pretty grim and all the reasons why we have to keep working harder. And certainly you walk into a Hand in Hand school and classroom and you see lots of reasons that give lots of inspiration. I meet tons of people. I'm surrounded by people from all sorts of circles who prove that we can do it and that these are choices that we can have. And if you and can have more largely, like sort of writ large. And if you look throughout history for all the things that show us why we're in a place that is dark and probably going to get darker for the time being. There's all sorts of examples of the ways that people have changed things. And when you thought it was never possible and unimaginable and couldn't happen, it happens. And it happens because of the work of people like Hand in Hand and like all of us, like all of you who are part of it. And lots of other people and lots of ordinary people who don't have chances to bring their voices out. So that's the work that we have to keep doing and to amplify and to strengthen and to expand.
Thank you. Amazing words. Thank you. There's a lot of questions coming through. I thought it was really important for us to hear them both. So we won't have that much time for questions. But there's one here, and I know people are really thirsty to hear your stories and powerful words, both of you. If you had to distill these stories, these powerful images that you've shared from this whole year into just one takeaway about Hand in Hand that you would like us to take away today, what would it be? Mohammed?
I would share one sentence that one of the parents told me in October. He told me, this place, this school is the safest place on earth, not because we have shelters, but because we have an idea, we have a vision.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I think the word that comes to me is light. It is a place of such powerful and beautiful light. And also there is such a heaviness that we're all walking around with. And you come into Hand in Hand or in conversations with colleagues or parents or whatever, and you suddenly feel it lifting and you can feel yourself breathing again and you can feel that there's possibility. And so I would say light is really what captures that for me.
Thank you. There's a question here about how staff are getting support. Mohammed, could you relate quickly, or briefly, excuse me, to what you're doing so much with your hearts? How are staff getting support to process that ongoing emotional trauma?
Um, it's it's the most important thing to do in schools is to listen to the hearts of the staff, is to give them guidance, is to give them a weekly meeting with the advisors, with the facilitators, and hand in hand. And Danny is here also to say more, elaborate more about this. But we focus a lot on talking to their passions, to their hearts, to their dreams, to really value their their work on a daily basis. Uh, every little impact, every little sentence, every little word that they bring to the schools can change the future of these kids. And I always say, no matter what we do and how we do, it's so little in terms of what they deserve. The educators, staff, this is the most important thing in the world in my eyes. Um, yeah.
Thank you. And a question for you, Rebecca.
Mhm.
Is there a moment you can share that you really remember powerfully that captures what Hand in Hand made possible this year?
Mm. I do have to say it was that moment when Anram wrote to me and said, Libi itchem, my heart is with you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just carried us through this whole time. It's carried me through this whole time. And the funny thing is, Mohammed, you just said, you know, we have to listen to the hearts of our educators. And I feel like so much of what Hand in Hand is about is really listening with an open heart to other people's hearts and where they're at and their pain and their hopes. And I felt that's what Anram was doing for us. And it's enabled me to keep doing it unquestioningly to be part of all this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both. I just want to echo something that Mohammed said. I'm going to totally butcher it, I'm sure, but being part of the solution is the most radical educational lesson we can give. What we're doing is being the future that we want. And it just really hit me when you said that.
Mm.
We couldn't do this without our parents. We couldn't do this without our teachers and our principals. We also couldn't do this without our CEO. So I want to give the last word to Danny Elazar, our CEO. Danny, do you like to round us up?
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. It's really strengthening to see you all with us. Many familiar faces and new faces, and it's really great to see that you're all with us in this evening, our evening. Thank you so much, Mohammad and Rebecca. We know each other for many years. We have many conversations, and every time you inspire me over and over again. I must say that, and that's and I think it's a great honor to have you with us this evening, so everybody else can also hear your powerful and meaningful and moving words this evening. I'd like to finalize because, again, after your words, there's not, I don't feel there's much more I can add, but I would like to say, because if we listen both to Muhammad and to Rebecca, I think you all can get a feeling of how much pain we had to deal with in our schools this year, how much pain from both sides of the conflict. And that's so unique and different, and how big the hearts of everybody had to be to contain this and to support each other and to show empathy to each other in such times. And you heard it both from Rebecca and from Muhammad. And I admire our principals and our educators for being able to lead the schools in such times. And just think what a mission that is. And I just want us all to understand, and this is a lot because you people that are joining us to us enable this, that we as staff and parents and students, we choose hand in hand every day. Because this is really going against the stream in such a situation of conflict. We choose every day the vision of shared society, of equality, of justice, and of peace. It's a choice we make day and day over and over again. And in such times of horror and war, it's not an easy decision to make, but we see the commitment and the determination of the staff and the parents of doing that. And again, listening to Mohammad and Rebecca, I think that demonstrates that determination and that ability and the open hearts looking forward and seeing such a vision. And we'd like to thank you very much, everybody who's here and the ones who couldn't make it as well, for enabling this, because we need a lot of support from you and from many others. So I would like to request that as we close now the calendar year, that you consider renewing your support and if possible also increasing it to enable us to grow. We have growth even in these times, looking at our HIFA schools and our Galilee schools that we're looking towards next year and all the other schools. And that's the future. We're educating the future leaders of Israel. And the more students we have, the more parents we have, the more ability to impact Israeli society we have. So we'd like to thank you very, very much for supporting us all these years, for being here with us here this evening, and also looking into the future and keeping optimism at this time as well. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Alon, for leading this conversation.
Thank you. Well, we've come to the end of our time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I'm so sorry we didn't get to answer some of these excellent questions that are in here, but we will have more opportunities. We'll have more webinars, and you're always welcome to contact staff. Mohammed, thank you so much for your time. Rebecca, thank you so much. And Danny,
Shukran, Alon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
thank you,
very
everyone.
much.
Have a good rest of your day.